The study of the past can be daunting. It's long, it's complex, and oftentimes dry. There are names, dates, and places to memorize, events to understand and analyze, and then people have the audacity to ask, why do we even need to learn all this stuff anyway? If that question has ever crossed your mind, then boy, do I have the video for you, because today we're talking about what is history. So let's get started. There are two ways to answer the question of what history is: the easy way and the hard way. Let's start with the easy way. History is the study of the past. That's it. We use that definition a lot. But if we really want to dig into this question, we have to look at both how we know the past and how we talk about it. And that means we have to talk about interpretation. It's tempting to think of the past as this objective reality. Things happened, and those things are facts. But understanding the past isn't as simple as reading off the Wikipedia page of an event we've never experienced ourselves. Our knowledge of the past is always filtered through our perspective in time. We call that hindsight. And no matter who we are, we all bring our unique perspective to the historical record. Historians try their best to account for that, but there will always be gaps in our knowledge. Those gaps can be filled in different ways by different people with different perspectives. Which leads us to the second part of our definition. History is interpretation. We interpret the evidence that we have to come up with narratives about the past. Narratives that can then be used to make sense of the present or to predict the future. Here's an example. The Treaty of Versailles was a treaty signed in 1919 that ended World War I. It's pretty widely accepted as a fact that the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919. But why was it signed then? Why was it worded the way it was? What was the impact of the treaty on international relations going forward? All of these questions require interpretation, and historians will approach them in different ways based on their own perspectives and the perspectives of their audiences. A historian writing in 1920 might emphasize the importance of the treaty for ending the war and achieving lasting peace. A historian writing in 1940 might emphasize the role of the treaty in causing World War II, and a historian writing in 2023 might emphasize the lasting effects of the treaty on modern geopolitics. And all of these interpretations would be considered valid. No one interpretation is more true than another. They just highlight different aspects of the same event. Okay, so history is the study of the past, and history is interpretation. Together, they form a definition that looks something like this. History is the body of knowledge about the past that is created by interpreting evidence. This definition captures two important aspects of history. First, history is not just one story. It's many stories. The past is vast and complex, and no single narrative can encompass all of its richness. That means that there's room in history for multiple perspectives and interpretations. Second, history is always evolving. As new evidence is discovered, or as historians bring new perspectives to old evidence, our understanding of the past changes. So history isn't static. It moves and grows and changes over time. I realize that sounds a little abstract, so let's bring it home with an example. Let's go back to the Treaty of Versailles. Remember that this treaty ended World War I? Now imagine you're a German citizen living in Berlin in 1923. You've heard about the treaty, but you've never actually read it. You're not alone. At the time, the treaty wasn't widely publicized in Germany. You've been experiencing the economic and political instability of post-war Germany firsthand. Your country's currency is almost worthless. There's food and fuel shortages. And you're worried about what the future will hold. One day you find a copy of the Treaty of Versailles and you start reading it. You discover that Germany is being blamed for the war and that it's responsible for a huge amount of reparations. You also discover that Germany has lost territory and that its military has been greatly reduced in size. You feel angry and bitter about the treaty. To you, it seems unfair and unjust. Then you put the treaty down and you shake your head. It's just propaganda, you think. Germany didn't lose World War I. The war was a total disaster, sure, but both sides were clearly to blame. You think about the millions of Germans who died in the conflict, the families torn apart, the cities bombed and destroyed. How could anyone blame Germany for that? The thought makes you sick to your stomach. Imagine that you share these thoughts with a friend of yours who went to university in Paris before the war. He tells you that he thinks the treaty is fair. After all, France was badly damaged during the war, and thousands of French people died. He also mentions that his cousin was killed, in the fighting and that his father was injured. Your friend argues that Germany needs to be held accountable for the damage it caused. But you shake your head again. You tell him that you accept the idea that Germany should be punished for the actions of a small group of leaders. Surely the French people don't want revenge, you ask him. He says that he does want revenge, but that he also wants to see Germany change so that this never happens again. You sigh. How can either of you be sure that this won't happen again? Your friend says that the only way to prevent another war is to punish Germany, so that it never does anything like that again. You argue that this kind of punishment won't work. The two of you keep arguing back and forth, but neither of you can convince the other that he's wrong. Let us fast forward a few years to 1940. The Germans have invaded Poland, and your friend has been killed in the fighting. You're still in Berlin? Stena. But now the city is under the control of the Nazis. One day you find a copy of the Treaty of Versailles in the rubble of your house. You open it up and begin to read. You remember when you first read the treaty and how angry you were? But now, things are very different. Now you read the treaty with the knowledge that Germany has been at war again and that your country is facing serious challenges once again. You read about the territorial losses and the reparations and the military restrictions, and you nod your head slowly. Maybe this treaty isn't such a bad thing after all, you think. Maybe we needed to be punished so that we could learn from our mistakes. These two examples show how the same historical document can be interpreted in different ways based on the reader's perspective. In 1923, the treaty represented an unjust peace that placed the blame and the burden solely on Germany. In 1940, the treaty represented a necessary corrective that had saved France and the rest of Europe from further destruction. History isn't just a set of facts, it's a set of stories that we tell ourselves about the past. And those stories can change depending on who's telling them and why. Now here's the thing. That's not a bad thing. Interpretation is at the heart of the historical method. Different perspectives allow us to see the past in new and interesting ways. Plus, if everyone interpreted the past in the same way, then no one would ever learn anything new. So instead of worrying about whether or not there's one true interpretation of the past, historians focus on asking good questions about the evidence. Questions like, who created this document and why? What biases might they have had? Who else created documents about this event, and what might their perspectives be? And what other evidence do we have about this event? By asking these kinds of questions, historians can test the validity of different interpretations and ensure that their own biases do not get in the way of understanding the past. This means that studying history is a rigorous process that requires careful attention to detail and a willingness to consider multiple perspectives. But it also means that history is exciting and engaging. Every time we turn to the past, we have the opportunity to hear different voices and to see the world in new ways. So next time you re-faced with a historical event or a period and you wonder how in the world did this happen, remember that there's no single answer to that question. There are as many answers as there are perspectives. But that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's what makes history so fascinating. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to help us keep bringing these videos to you. And as always, if you want to learn more about any of the topics we've covered, you can find additional resources in the description below.